Very good. Well, thank you all for being in attendance today. I'm sorry for any mix-up live or virtual, but I'm glad we're able to bring this to you here while y'all can stay there and still get the same content of what we're here to talk about today, which is Medicare annual enrollment. So my name is Kevin Chaikin. I'm with MP Group. Tell you a little bit more about us and who I am here in a moment. But the topic of today's conversation is Medicare annual enrollment. And we've been doing this, with multiple locations of the Kensington for some years now, just because Medicare is confusing. And obviously, if you're already on it, which I'm sure you all or most of you are, or you have family on it, it's it's confusing. And there's a lot of misinformation, I would classify it as, in regard to what you should do and what's available in terms of benefits and coverage. So we want to talk about that today because this is the time of year where the confusion is certainly at a peak. So we want to make sure you know what you need to know and what you need to do during annual enrollment. So let me go start here. So this is just here's what we noticed that you are told during the Medicare annual enrollment period. And number one is now it's the time to make a change and you have to do something. You must do something. You also hear that you qualify for plans that cost you nothing, maybe nothing per month, and maybe nothing out of your pocket. And they'll pay back your Part B premium. You also hear things about getting thousands of dollars worth of free medical supplies and groceries and all sorts of other ancillary benefits. And where are you hearing this? If you've ever turned the TV on in October, then you've probably noticed it's on the TV and a lot of these commercials, the Joe Namaths and George Foremans of the world, who are advertising these things. And while they're not untrue, they are what I would call half-truths because they don't really tell the whole story of who qualifies and what the rest of the plan really covers and offers you. So what we really think you should know during annual enrollment is that you don't have to make a plan change. There is no requirement for everyone to go out and shop plans and change plans. As a matter of fact, the majority of people end up not changing and not needing to make a change. In years past, they've estimated it's about 10% that really need to change. I do anticipate it's going to be a higher percentage this year because of all the changes going on with Medicare, in particular related to the Inflation Reduction Act and the prescription coverage changes. It doesn't mean that the majority of people need to make a change, so don't rush out and think you have to do something. Just be actively engaged with yours or your family's coverage to make sure that you're not just leaving it as is because it's worked great this year and in years past. So you should definitely take an active approach and be an advocate for yourself, but you don't have to change. We'll certainly talk about how we can help through this and what that review process looks like to determine a change. And then number two, it's nothing new here, but if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. And that's true, I think, of everything, and certainly with Medicare. So when you hear a lot of claims being made about all these extra benefits or someone over here qualifies for this and over here that, doesn't necessarily apply to you, and it's not necessarily as good as it sounds. So MP Group, who we are a Northern Virginia-based company. I live and work in Reston specifically, but we are in Medicare exclusive independent insurance agency. So that means all we do is Medicare. I don't help with any other under 65 healthcare at the moment, life insurance, home and auto. It's just Medicare, and we are independent. So we do not work for just one company as captive agents or for one insurance company. So our goal is to help our clients meet their financial and health needs and goals in retirement. And so trying to find plans that fit you, not try to fit a square peg into a round hole, so to speak. And our services are at no cost. So we offer no cost education, enrollment, and lifetime support to Medicare beneficiaries. Obviously, nothing is free, but it's really not anything else out of your pocket. We do get paid. We're not doing it for charity, so I'm not going to make any bogus claims like that. We are paid by the insurance companies that our clients do business with for helping them to shop and enroll, and then we service those policies just as if you went to a home or auto agent. So there's no fee, and you don't pay extra premium just to work with an independent broker, whether it's through us or anybody else. Now, this is our footprint, not really relevant to those of you living at the Kensington necessarily, but if you are, family that's tuning in, or you move, or you have family and friends elsewhere, we are growing. But we are obviously based right here in Northern Virginia. And then lastly, just real quick about me, how did I get into this? Medicare is not super exciting. It's a very niche part of the insurance space, and I had no idea about it, quite honestly, when I got my insurance license, but I got mine in 2018, and then stumbled upon Medicare, and specifically had a front row seat to what my dad was going through as a new to Medicare eligible and beneficiary, and just the confusion and the mistakes that were made, things that I know that now we seek to help people avoid all of those same mistakes, and that I wish I could have helped him with. Not a terrible situation, but there were some mistakes made that cost a little bit more than you'd like them to cost in the long run. So that really opened my eyes to the need to help people in this space, the senior citizens of this country with Medicare, because it's really an underserved population. Even though there are thousands and thousands of agents and a lot of insurance companies, there are 60 million Medicare beneficiaries. That number is going up to 80 million people. That's a lot of people to serve, right? So there is certainly a need, and I saw it as an opportunity to finally go out on my own and start a business to support that beautiful family over there on the left that I'm lucky enough to be able to hang out with on a daily basis. So what we'll cover today. So this is why you're here, right? So we will get level set on Medicare just to make sure we all have the same foundational knowledge. You may have been on Medicare for years, but again, I know you don't live this every day. We talk it and live it every day. So we want people to kind of just make sure we're all on the same page there with the parts of Medicare. And then we'll talk about annual enrollment. So what is it? Who does it affect? Who's eligible? What can change in benefits? Where can you find these changes? What changes can you make? And then ultimately, what's really coming up here in 2025 and beyond, and how we can help in the process. So parts of Medicare, let's get down to the basics. A, B, C, and D. Here's the alphabet soup, right? And this is where things start to get confusing. So just to clarify, Medicare Part A is your hospital coverage. That is, I would think of that as inpatient room and board. If you are admitted to the hospital or a skilled nursing facility, rehab, also covers some home health and hospice. So that is Part A. And the vast majority of people do not pay a premium for that. Probably all, or certainly most of you, do not pay a monthly premium. If you collect Social Security from your own work history or your spouse's work history, you qualify for premium-free Part A. It's the same 40 quarters that qualifies you for Social Security. On Part B, that is your outpatient coverage. So this is really more of your day-to-day benefits with doctor's visits, outpatient care, preventive services. And so we're talking with outpatient care. It could be urgent care, emergency room, surgeries, physical therapy, occupational speech therapy, x-rays, labs, MRIs, CAT scans, chemo, radiation, all these things are under Part B. And Part B does come with a monthly premium. It's about $175 a month this year, just under at $174.70. We don't know yet what next year's premium would be. I would certainly include all 2025 information if I could, but for whatever reason, CMS does not release that before annual enrollment for some reason. And anyway, it'll probably be a little bit higher, but right now it's about 175, unless you are in the small percentage of people nationwide who have IRMA, or the income related monthly adjustment amount, which is going to potentially cost you more for Part B. That is based on your tax returns from typically 2 years prior. It's nothing to be overly concerned about. If you get a letter that states you owe more, it can be appealed if it appears to be wrong. This is all something that we help our clients with every day. So we can help on a case-by-case basis. Part B also comes with late enrollment penalties. Now, we're not here to talk about how to get into Medicare A and B today. And it doesn't mean that anybody that doesn't have Part B at age 65 has penalties, right? It's all about what your employer or your group coverage options are and what you have at the age of 65 that determine whether or not you will have penalties. Certainly having no insurance or having an individual, ACA plan would potentially rack up penalties once you turn 65. But again, we can help you on that with a case-by-case basis. And so when we move forward here, every other part of Medicare we discuss is going to be offered by private insurance companies. So A and B, you get from the government. There's no Part A plan. There's no Part B plan. It's A and B. That red, white, and blue card that you receive is coming from the federal government. Everything else through the private insurance companies. So next is Part C. And Part C is also known as Medicare Advantage. This is where you are going to see more of the heavily advertised options. So on television in the next couple of months, and a lot of stuff that you may get in the mail. Hopefully you don't get these, but phone calls and text messages, it can be pretty relentless. It's not to say there's anything wrong with the plans, but some of the marketing and sales practices are a little bit, borderline unethical, I think, at times. But I like to think of Part C as standing for combined. So these plans combine all of your coverage into one plan. And so what happens here, instead of the government being your primary payer with A and B, the government pays the insurance company to manage your Medicare benefits. So now you get a card from the insurance company, and that red, white, and blue card that you have with A and B on it, you're going to tuck that away someplace safe. You're not going to use it. And you'll use the Medicare Advantage card for anything related to the hospital under Part A, anything inpatient, your outpatient services under Part B, all doctor's visits, et cetera. And Part D services are typically included, which is with Medicare Part D is your prescription drug benefit, which we'll get to here in a moment. And Medicare does not cover Medicare does not cover dental or glasses or hearing, right? So these plans have to cover all that Medicare covers, and they may offer additional benefits that Medicare does not, such as those things I mentioned now and many other benefits. Although I do expect us to see a little scaling back of those extras as we head into next year. We'll know more in October, just again, based around some of the changes in the legislation and what it's costing really to offer all these additional benefits, both to the insurance companies and the government. So now these are managed care plans. So, if you ever had an individual policy before Medicare or an employer plan, it's a managed care plan. You have an HMO or a PPO typically. Those are network based. So your best cost sharing is in the network, although a PPO may allow you to go out of network, typically at a higher cost, but these are network based plans, and monthly premiums vary. So it's not like it has nothing to do with your age or gender. It's really all about what plans are available in your area. So we represent, several plans in this area. And if plan A is, or plan, I'll use numbers here because there's enough letters with Medicare. If plan 1 is 0 per month, then it's 0 for everyone. If it's plan 2 is $20, it's 20 for everyone, and so on. So they all do also have a maximum out of pocket. A max out of pocket does not exist on Medicare A and B, which is why if you are sitting in that room and you have Medicare A and B, you probably have a Medicare supplement plan or Medigap policy, because you don't want to be subject to 20% co-insurance on all Part B covered services, for instance, right? There's no limit. So these plans will also provide that financial umbrella so that there is a max out of pocket that you will spend in a given year. So moving on to Part D. By the way, we'll wait till the end for this, but if you have questions, write them down. I'd love to take any questions as we get near the end. We've got some time left to go here, but happy to take questions. So please do write them down, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So Part D, that's your prescription coverage. Basically, your coverage for self-administered outpatient prescriptions, things that you're picking up at the pharmacy and you are administering yourself, mostly tablets, capsules, etc. There are certain prescriptions or drugs that are covered under Part B. Those are usually done in an outpatient setting by a healthcare provider. So that could be an injection or an infusion for osteoporosis or macular degeneration or chemotherapy and things like that. Those are typically Part B services. Part D will be what you administer yourself that you get at the pharmacy. Now, Part D plans, they are private insurance plans. There is no government Part D. So you're not going to, even if you call Medicare to enroll in Part D, they are enrolling you with an insurance company, not into some standard government Part D. So what happens here is Medicare sets the rules, and the insurance companies have to play within the lines, and then they have to meet certain minimums, and then they can kind of go above and beyond. But there's a lot of differences, even though there's a lot of the same in terms of structure. Like the deductible, for instance, is $545 this year. You won't see a plan with a higher deductible than that. And there are 4 stages of coverage and certain formulary requirements that every plan has to meet. So those are going to be consistent across plans, but then you will see wide variations in monthly premium. So the cost per month to have the plan can vary, from close to 0 to well over $100 per month. Drug formularies will vary by plan. So while there are certain requirements, the minimums that these plans have to meet for formulary or drug list requirements. They still can be very different. What might be a tier 3 on one of your plans could be a tier 4 on somebody else's. What's covered under someone's plan, right, you're next door to you or next to the seat next to you, that drug may not be covered on their plan. Okay, so it's not like there is a catch-all for everything or a best drug plan. It's really based on what your prescription needs are. And that's part of the services that we offer, in addition to, of course, reviewing Part C, is Part D, your prescription coverage. If your drugs change year to year or your plan changes or disappears, you need to make sure you're going through this review process. Now, Part D also, like Part B, does get affected by IRMA, the income adjustment, and a late enrollment penalty if you haven't navigated it properly. So again, I know we're not here talking about initial enrollment into Medicare and avoiding penalties. And if you've been retired a while, IRMA is not typically an issue, but just be advised if you or maybe you're a future Medicare beneficiary there for your family, this could impact you. All things that will help you walk through when the time comes to enroll properly and ensure you a smooth transition to avoid penalties and not overpaying for things if you shouldn't be paying IRMA. Now, with Part D, this will be added as a standalone plan. So if you don't have Part C, which is Medicare Advantage, right, it's included. If you have just original Medicare, Part D will be a standalone product. And you typically, like I said earlier, will have a Medicare supplement plan as your secondary medical. So in this case, you've got a red, white, and blue card for A and B, a Medicare supplement, maybe Plan G or F or N, right, as your secondary medical payer to provide you that umbrella coverage. And then that third card, which is for the pharmacy. And then Medigap, as we were just mentioning. So, pardon? Oh, okay, I didn't know if someone had a question there. So Medigap, just like with Part C, with Medigap, you have to have A and B. So this is not like you just buy a Medigap plan and it's going to cover everything, or you buy a Medicare Advantage plan and you can drop Part B and stop paying the premium. You have to have A and B. And on the Medigap side, these plans are going to cover everything that Medicare approves in terms of the services. So instead of having to pay 20% coinsurance for a surgery or radiation or chemotherapy, a Medigap plan is going to come in and pick up all or some of that 20% coinsurance. So it is basically sitting there behind Medicare. Once Medicare approves and pays, insurance company pays. They don't tell you what doctors to go to or what you can get done or what's approved. That's up to Medicare. So you're not necessarily fighting that battle with the insurance company. They're just there to collect your premium and pay your claims. So while this is going to be a more costly option up front, it is also going to reduce out-of-pocket exposure and create a lot more predictability on the back end when you use the benefits. They are standardized. So when we mention plan letters like G or N, if you're comparing Plan G across companies, the benefits are identical from company to company. So they cannot vary in terms of, well, one deductible is this, and this over here it's this, and we'll cover that, and this over here. It's all the same. The only difference is the company and what they charge you every month, what their rate history is. We look at rate stability, and obviously want to keep you with someone as stable as possible, and of course customer service and things like that. But the benefits are the same. Premiums do vary though. So if everybody in that room has a Medicare supplement, I'm sure you're all paying something different, even if it's the same plan letter, because premiums vary by age, gender, tobacco use, and household size. They do also vary by geography, but you're all in the same area. But that there are a lot of variables that go into the Medigap premiums. So hard to really obviously provide you an average, but we can obviously talk about your individual situation if you'd like. Now, this is just the Medigap chart. Not going to dive too deep into this. Some of you may have C or C or F, which have since been discontinued. So since 2020, if you've been new to Medicare, you can no longer get C and F. So you have G and N are typically the most common. For those of you that might be on C or F and your premiums have been going up rather quickly the last few years since it's no longer available to be newly purchased, you may look to options like G and N, which provide excellent access to providers, excellent coverage, very minimal out of pocket, and save you a bit of money every month. So as an example, in Medicare annual enrollment which we're really about to dive into the meat of it, it's not about Medicare supplement. So you're not, many of you may be on a supplement now. It's probably working phenomenally, right? It's great coverage, it's peace of mind coverage. But the rates obviously go up over time. Now, this is not the time of year to say, hey, Kevin, I want to review my med sup and use annual enrollment to make a change. We'll do that with you, regardless any time of year, because you can do it 12 months out of the year. But you do not have rights during annual enrollment to just up and change your supplement to a different company or a different plan letter. Typically, with rare exceptions, you will be required to go through medical underwriting to change a Medicare supplement plan. So it's not a guarantee. We can talk to you about it if you have questions, but just know that it's not tied to any time of year. It's tied to really your insurability as seen by the insurance company. However, we do talk about it this time of year a lot with clients because as we're doing your Part D reviews, the Medicare supplement questions come up. So it still is relevant. So take an example here of Carol, who's a 70-year-old female on Plan F. So she qualified for that plan before it went away with ABC Insurance Company. And Carol is now paying $250 a month on Plan F because started whatever it started at. Maybe these are arbitrary numbers, but could be 150, 170, 180. But it's going up fast. And now she's paying $250 a month. So after we talked to her and review her options, we determined that she can move to Plan G and pay $160 a month. So now she's saving $90 a month. So just for your reference, if you have Plan F and you're wondering, well, what about Plan G? Well, the only difference is that the Part B deductible is not covered under Plan G and it is covered under Plan F. That's literally the only difference. That deductible is only $240 for the year. So Carol saves about almost $1,100, $1,080 in the first year on premium. She has to pay the deductible. She uses the benefits, so she pays that $240. She comes out on top about $840. So it's something worth considering. Again, it's not a guarantee to be able to change, but obviously, there's no reason to pay more for insurance than you really need to. So something to keep in mind. But now let's talk about annual enrollment and what you really came here for, what you need to know, because it's coming up quick. So annual enrollment, or AEP, in our world is a set time of year where enrollees can evaluate and change their Medicare coverage. It takes place from October 15th through December 7th every year. Dates never change. So what will happen is if you call me today, I can't talk about plans with you, but we can start talking about plans on October 1st. That's when they're released to the public. Enrollments cannot take place, however, until October 15th. Final enrollment, deadline is December 7th, and those changes for new coverage will go into effect January 1st. Now, who is eligible? So this is for current beneficiaries. So if you're in the room for a family member, or somebody that's not on Medicare yet, but they're turning 65 or they're retiring late, this doesn't impact them. It will, of course, at some point. Everyone has to deal with AEP at some point, but this is for folks already on Medicare. So what we're looking at, is really Part C and D. So we'll talk about what can change in these benefits, right? So A and B will have changes every year, right? The Part B premium and deductibles change. There could be benefit changes, but we can't control that. We don't make any choices when it comes to A and B. The government will say, here's what's changed, and that's how it is. What you can impact, though, are your Part C and D plans, because you can review and make changes there, right? So you will see changes to your benefits package, monthly premiums, co-pays and co-insurance requirements, deductibles, max out-of-pockets, whether that be on medical or prescription. The drug lists or the formularies can change. So absolutely, that is really important this time of year, is focus on prescription coverage. And then your plan network and service providers, whether it's a network-based plan like a Medicare Advantage plan, your doctors need to be checked, or your pharmacy network on your Part D coverage, that can all change. And where do you find these changes? So you should have received something in the mail by now. If not, we've got about 6 days to go. Your Part C or D plan is required to send you an ANOC, or an annual notice of change, by the end of September. And this notice summarizes changes in coverage and costs that will start on January 1st. So if you haven't gotten that yet, double check the mail, call your insurance company, check on your member services portal online if you have one, but that should be to you already, or at least by the end of this month. So what can you do, right? What changes can you make? So this time of year, it's really about, again, Part C and D. So the first three are about Part C. So Medicare Advantage to Medicare Advantage. Let's say you have a Medicare Advantage plan. It's working out great, but the plan has a significant increase in max out of pocket next year, or your doctors leave the plan. Well, then you can find a different one. So we can help you move from one Medicare Advantage plan to another one. By the way, you can also make that change during the first quarter every year during Medicare Advantage open enrollment. So it's not like you're limited to this window in the fall. You also can make that change there in the first quarter if you start the year on Medicare Advantage. Number two, if you're on original Medicare, you can go to Medicare Advantage. So if someone, let's say your premiums have skyrocketed to $300 or $400 a month on your supplement, or you never had a supplement and now you've got limitless out-of-pocket exposure on original Medicare, a Medicare Advantage plan at least will provide you a ceiling on your spending so that you are not subject to endless bills. That's the only time of year you can get a Medicare Advantage plan from original Medicare. Anytime we say the only time, it does exclude special enrollment periods, which are not predictable. They are, case by case basis. You move, you have a weather, it could be a FEMA emergency. I mean, there are a lot of different things that create special enrollment periods, but this is the only time of year other than an SEP where you could add Advantage from original Medicare. Number three, you can drop off of Medicare Advantage, go back to original Medicare. Also something you can do during the first quarter of next year. Now, I'll stop here to highlight something. This does not mean that you can drop Medicare Advantage, go back to original Medicare, and automatically get a Medicare supplement, right? So if your intention is that you are just going to go move to Medicare Advantage for a year and then drop off it and go back to original Medicare and get your supplement without underwriting, it's not how it works. So again, rare exceptions on special enrollment periods, but basically what would happen here is you could go back to original Medicare. A and B they have to take you. The government cannot say no. So you can be on original Medicare, but you will go through underwriting typically for that Medicare supplement. So we always recommend you start early, do the underwriting first, get approved before making any changes to the Medicare Advantage plan, and then ultimately enroll in a Part D option. And the rest of these are all about Part D, standalone Part D plans. Number four being the most common. You have a Part D plan and you want to change to something else because the plan has changed significantly or your drug needs have changed and there's a better option for you. Also, if you missed an enrollment period into Part D and you don't have anything else, any other time to enroll, then AEP would be the time to add Part D, or you can also opt out. So here are some of the major changes for next year and beyond. And like I said, it's changing a lot. So number one, we do know the Part D deductible for next year. It's up from $545 up to $590. That is the max allowable deductible for prescriptions, and that's on whether you're getting your drug plan through a standalone plan or Medicare Advantage. That's the max deductible. Now, not every plan will have that deductible. Usually you see lower deductibles on drug coverage on Medicare Advantage than perhaps on Part D. It's not to say it will be that way next year, but $590 is the max. And that's basically what you pay for most medications until the plan kicks in. I believe most standalone drug plans next year will probably use the entire $590 if I had to guess. The insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies are responsible or more responsible moving forward for a lot of these costs. So obviously when you're going to see increases to things like deductibles, and probably premiums, potentially copays and coinsurance for certain medications. But that's all just, part of what's changing here with the recent legislation. So Part D, Part D coverage gap is eliminated. This is the donut hole for any of you who have ever heard or used that term. Okay, so this is where if you reach a certain threshold, you pay 25% coinsurance on all your medications. It can be quite, expensive if you are on the wrong meds. So that's gone starting in January. So now we'll move down to 3 stages of drug coverage. You'll have deductible, initial coverage, and catastrophic. And catastrophic will be the point when you've hit this new max out of pocket. So $2,000 max out of pocket being implemented on Part D. This is the first time ever. There was an unofficial max this year based on when your plan hit the catastrophic coverage stage and you paid zero, usually wound up being somewhere around 3,300 to 3,500, but it is a hard max at 2,000 in 2025. Now, this doesn't really, most people do not spend that much on drugs, but obviously if you're in this category, this is a great thing for you. And it may not even mean that you spend a full 2,000. So that next bullet there says more payments by third-party payers will accrue as if they were beneficiary out-of-pocket costs, which can reduce your spending. So there are two forms of plans next year. There's basic alternative plans and there are enhanced alternative plans. On a basic alternative plan, your max out of pocket's 2,000, and if you reach the max, you've paid 2,000 out of your pocket. Okay. On the enhanced alternative plan, there are payments made by third-party payers, so think pharmaceutical manufacturers, that will actually count towards your max. So maybe you spent 1,500, but then the pharmaceutical company paid 500 towards that or in discounts. Now you've reached your max. You're not going to pay 2,000 out of pocket. You will stop at 1,500 because the payments by the pharmaceutical manufacturer count. So that would be the feature of the enhanced plan. And there's not one to say one is better than the other because everyone's different. Some of you may greatly benefit from an enhanced alternative plan while others may not need that, right? So it may not necessarily, it doesn't just make sense to buy the plan because it's enhanced if your drug needs do not dictate that. Excuse me. So there's also a Medicare prescription payment plan being introduced. So what that is, it's a smoothing technique so that you're not stuck paying all this up front. Right? You have a $590 deductible and you're on a drug that costs $1,000 with a 25% coinsurance. So in January, you're going to spend $590 plus $250 for the coinsurance. Now you spent almost $850. You don't want to pay that all up front. So this payment program is going to allow you to spread those payments out for the duration of the year, the rest of the months, whether it starts in January or in June. Okay, so it's not, you'll never pay more than the 2,000 max. So it's not, the 2,000 max is not calculated as you pay. It's calculated on what your responsibility is or will be. So you don't have to worry about, is spreading it out going to cost me more? It's not. You're not financing anything here. You're not paying more. You're just spreading out that cost. You don't have to foot, $1,500, $1,000, $2,000 in the first month. And then the other things that have not been announced yet, again, anything changed with A and B in terms of deductibles and premiums we are yet to hear about. Changes continue on for 2026. So if you've paid any attention to this, the negotiated discounts on these 10 drugs were released earlier this month. Medicare is required to release the list of the next 15 medications by February. So this program will continue on for a few years, where up to 70 more drugs will be negotiated by 2030. The first 10, by the way, this is not going to effect until 2026, so you're not going to see any necessarily of the direct impact. But the 10 drugs that have been up for negotiation, and we've probably heard of a lot of these or some of them, are on them. Eliquis, Jardiance, Xarelto, Januvia, Farxiga, Entresto, Enbrel, Imbruvica, Stelara, and Fiasp Novolog insulin. So here's how we help, and then we'd love to take some questions if you have them. So that annual notice of change that has already come or will come in the next 5-6 days may not be that easy to understand what's changed with your plan. We can certainly help you understand those changes. And then, of course, conduct a no-cost review of your current coverage. If you find, hey, something has changed here that doesn't necessarily appeal to you, let's review what's available in the market. And then when applicable or appropriate, we can present available plan options with parts C and D, if that is what you ultimately need to do or want to do. We can confirm your current providers remain in network. That includes your pharmacy, right? So even if you're on a Part D plan, your pharmacy network can change. So whether it's doctors and pharmacies, we're going to be here with every step of the way. So our goal is to be right next to you and helping you find your plans and confirm the most important things. Because if you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, first thing we focus on is providers and drug coverage. Everything else, the extras, they don't matter until we meet those requirements. At the end of the day, our goal is to make this a long-term relationship. So we are looking at this to not only help you now, but continue to provide that service later. So we want to understand and meet your long-term financial and medical needs. So now, happy to answer questions. I'm going to move to this screen just in case you have to go or you don't want to ask a question. You can always call, text, or email us there, or scan that QR code with your camera app on your phone if you'd like to schedule an annual review during AEP starting in October. And with that, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I've got a couple. Let's see.
You want to start, Debbie?
Well, I didn't know the procedure.
You can start.
Okay, because it's live, I mean.
Yes.
Okay, I have several questions. I thought you were gonna be here in person, since you're not. I probably am gonna wait till the end when, because I have some very detailed questions to ask you. But I have one that I thought might be of interest to other people, and that is, as far as your reimbursement, I know you get the reimbursements through insurance companies, but I wasn't sure if the rules made even reimbursements, because I ask you that in the sense of transparency. I have a brother-in-law who lives in New York, and I have a brother who lives in New Jersey. They went to different Medicare brokers, and they got put into the same exact insurance, plan. So I kind of wondered if some paid more or how that works for the broker so that an independent decision is made in behalf of the client.
Sure. So first of all, I want to clarify, there's no decision made on behalf of the client. You make your own decisions. Okay. I'm not going to tell you where to go and who to enroll with. That said, the federal government regulates compensation for parts C and D. You can find this stuff online, so you can find out exactly what we get paid. It's not different from company to company, right? So all Part C plans in Northern Virginia pay the exact same amount. All Part D plans in Northern Virginia pay the exact same amount, unless they don't pay a commission, which is possible. So there is that potential for a conflict of interest, but those two plan types are regulated. Compensation is completely regulated. So Medicare supplement's a little different. I mean, it's a percentage of premium, depends on the company, depends on the plan. So, I mean, that's not exactly the same, but it's, when you're talking a difference of a couple percent, it's negligible. I don't really pay attention to the difference in premium or compensation on the supplement. As far as your personal detailed questions, I would recommend you call us for that. I cannot answer any individual questions about your situation here compliantly. So I just want to alert you of that. So we can definitely take annual enrollment questions, Medicare questions. But if it's really specific to your individual situation, I do recommend you call or email us.
Well, my question could be general enough, but it may not interest other people. So I'll ask you at the end, and then we'll determine if I need to talk with you. But sure. I know people may need to go or have other questions.
You have a question?
I'd be interested.
Yeah. You have a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I have children that are coming already in who are age 65 or higher, some coming up. So does Medicare start at what age? That's my question to you.
Yeah, so unless you qualify for Medicare based,
when is it?
So unless you qualify for Medicare based on disability or end-stage renal disease or ALS, it's 65. That's the minimum age.
All
now,
right.
Whether they need to go on Medicare at 65 or not depends on their current coverage.
I see. Now I have a grandchild that's got severe colitis. He's 28. He's out in the state of Oregon. Do people younger than 65 qualify for Medicare or not?
To qualify for Medicare under the age of 65, you need to be on Social Security disability income for at least 24 months, or you have ALS or end-stage renal disease. So you have to be on SSDI for 24 months.
Okay.
Questions in that room? Roger, do you have a question?
Yeah, one of
Rose,
the,
you have a question?
One is,
John's on a roll. You got one more?
one other question, which maybe your realm. Your secondary insurance. Frequently you're asked when you check in, what are your coverages? That's fine, understand A through D, whatever. But what about the secondary? In my case, I'm under TRICARE for life. Okay, that's not part of Medicare. And yet, in a way, I guess it is. The government program, TRICARE, as opposed to some other particular plans that you explain very well through C&D, you know. Kind of a broad question, I suppose.
So I'm not sure exactly the question. Now, TRICARE obviously is a military benefit, and thank you for your service. It is required to have A and B to get TRICARE for life. It basically works as a Medicare supplement and drug coverage. So someone on TRICARE for life, I would tell you, I wouldn't even be looking at anything else. You've got better drug coverage than what Medicare provides. And the TRICARE for life pretty much acts like a Medigap or Medicare supplement plan. So you can correct me if this is a different experience, but you probably have very little out-of-pocket costs for any medical services under A and B.
it's on your set. When
Yeah.
everything's done, I'll ask the rest of my questions.
I have a question. This is Pam Sellers. I work here in the Kensington. You mentioned in the enrollment period that there could be some exceptions based on changes in life. Would an exception be if you were living independently and you moved to an assisted living community? Would that count as an exception?
Yep, that could definitely qualify for a special enrollment period.
Question I had, we often have people who move here who use Kaiser, which is a great service, but often doesn't work well within a community because we provide physical therapy services here and they can't use physical therapy here. And I just don't know if you had any thoughts on using a managed care like that when you were living in a community.
Yeah, I mean, Kaiser especially, of course, is like the most limited, right? I mean, it's Kaiser doctors, Kaiser hospitals. So it's, I mean, that's even harder. I feel like at least, you know, and typically on another managed care plan, you could get a PPO, right? So there's more flexibility. But I would say when you're talking about coming to the facility and I mean, Medicare, traditional Medicare, the supplement probably works better, you know? I mean, at the end of the day, the older you get, right, the more care you're likely to need. And the Medicare supplement's going to remove the need to be dealing with networks and, you know, managed care requirements like prior authorization. And it also removes the wonder of what is this going to cost me every time I use a service, right? So you might paying a relatively hefty premium for a supplement, but you know that's about all you're paying for the year versus an Advantage plan where you might have an out-of-pocket max that's much higher than that fixed premium, right? So again, what's right for one is not right for the other necessarily. It's why we do work on, you know, with both options. But I mean, I'd say we find most people in assisted living are having an easier time, at least I would say, accessing care through original Medicare.
Thank you.
If you are licensed through your group, I noticed there are 14 states that you're not licensed. Suppose that I'm licensed with you and I move to one of those 14 other states. sometime during the year. Is there a resident or non-resident requirement status of 6 months, or what happens if mid-year, I move into one of the 14, then my coverage instantly drop with you? Or do I have to, is there a time coverage or a shift?
Yeah, so your coverage isn't gonna be dropped just because your broker's not in the state you moved to. Okay, now depending on the type of plan you have, you may have to resubmit a new application for the same plan, which you could do with the insurance company. For our clients, I pretty much will pick up the state if I have a client moving there, or we see a business reason to do so. So typically we would just move with you, so to speak. It's not a big barrier to entry to get into insurance and get a license. A non-resident license, you'd apply for that and we'd be able to help you out.
Kevin,
Yep,
can you hear me?
I sure can.
I'm 86 years old, and my husband just suggested that I look into dental insurance. And I'm wondering, what do I look at? How do I make a decision?
Yeah, I mean, so dental, if you're in for a lot of work, it makes sense at some point. I mean, the way I look at it is, what's the premium? What does it cost you if you go to the dentist twice a year, get a set of x-rays once, what's the out-of-pocket cost? And then compare that to what it costs in premium, because the premium on a dental insurance is going to cover your preventive services. So if they're relatively, in the same ballpark, and you need or would like to have additional allowance for crowns, bridges, root canals, dentures, implants, etc., then it may make sense to get dental. Again, this is something that I would, it's a little bit more, case by case, understand if you should get dental. But whatever you do, understand that dental always requires typically some kind of waiting period. Even if they offer benefits day one, it's usually at a reduced percentage of coverage or reduced allowance available that first year. So not that you're at this point you're gonna have a waiting period anyway, but just be aware of that. So if you think that a plan's gonna cover you 50% up to $2,500, and you may find out they're only going to cover you 20% up to $2,000 year one, right? So some of those more expensive services, may not be covered as well the first year.
Well done, because I want to ask my questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Pardon?
Yeah, you're free to
Okay.
ask.
I may have to give you a call, but something you can answer is about medical underwriting. I'm certainly familiar with what that is, but first of all, I'm not sure the process and what the probability of people, there's a lot of people like in this facility that are in the memory care unit. I mean, there's different kinds of dementia and there's different kinds of stages. But with that given, if somebody say is already like in an Advantage plan and they want to go into, regular Medicare with a supplement, and what are the chances of somebody in memory care getting a plan? Or I guess they can charge what they want. So what would be the review process and what would they be looking for to decide, or is it a non-starter?
I would say not good. Yeah, the insurance company could accept somebody at a higher risk at a higher premium, but at a memory care unit, not likely to happen. I mean, I wouldn't even bother, quite frankly, going through the process.
So if you're in an Advantage plan, you're stuck, basically you have to stay there. I mean,
Yeah, or you go to original Medicare, right? And you just don't have a supplement. So now it becomes extremely huge financial burden.
So that kind of dovetails on Pam's question, because people like myself with Kaiser, which is 3 blocks away, but if you've got someone in memory care and they don't want them to go, they want them to come to the facility and do things, you can't just, there's not much, it doesn't sound like there's many options.
There, unfortunately, there's not. I mean, that's, when you have something like, let's say, dementia, or, you're in a memory care facility, I mean, they're going to treat that like you're dealing with cancer, you're dealing with, some kidney failure, right? I mean, those are just things that they're not going to accept you on, you know? So unless you have a circumstance where you qualify for some special enrollment period, maybe you move facilities, that could help, right? That would be maybe an exception to the rule. But just being able to do it and go through underwriting, it's not likely to happen.
I don't understand what you mean if someone were to move. I mean, they still have dementia. I mean,
Yeah, but there are enrollment periods. So you move out of your plan service territory. So you're in Medicare Advantage Plan 1 in Northern Virginia, and you move to a memory care facility in Maryland, right? Well, now you've moved out of your plan service territory. Those types of things can create special enrollment periods, even into Medigap. So you're not going through underwriting. So I would never rely on underwriting for a significant illness or situation like you've described, but there are exceptions to the rule where a guaranteed issue opportunity may arise. I'm not going to go through all the special enrollment situations here today. That's too many to list. I mean, they are hard to predict because you can't really plan for them necessarily, but there are exceptions to every rule. Just
are
case.
you referring to if someone to move out of state and there wasn't a comparable, they were in Medicare Advantage and there wasn't a comparable one in their state, then they might be able to go into something with like a supplemental plan without the underwriting? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Medicare Advantage is like county by county. So it's not about comparable. It's about the plan is not available there. You can't keep that plan and move to a different state. It's not going to work. So you have to do something. So people will either change their Advantage plan to one available in their new location, or they may qualify for a guaranteed issue enrollment into a supplement because of that move.
Okay, maybe I'm trying to get my head around this. Let's just use Kaiser's example because they're in Maryland or DC, they're in this area. So somebody moved and they had like Kaiser here. They moved to Maryland. There is a plan available, comparable. So are you saying that they would still might be eligible to get a supplement plan without the problem with underwriting?
That is what I'm saying. Yes, that is possible. Again,
But if they just moved to another county here.
well, a different, it's not a county. All right, so different. Like that's the planned service areas are typically like Fairfax, Arlington, Prince William, Loudoun, Fauquier or whatever. Let's say that's the planned service territory, and then Montgomery, Howard, PG are a separate planned territory. So that is a move out of the planned service area.
So basically, let me just sum this up, and then I have one other question. Are you basically saying that it really doesn't pay to try to pursue an option of trying to switch from a Medicare Advantage to original Medicare with a supplemental plan if you're in dementia care here or somewhere else where?
Yes, I don't think it's a worthwhile effort. I'm not going to discourage anybody from doing it. I just wouldn't I would be honest with my client and say, this is not going to happen. we're not going to go forward with it. I mean, you could go directly to the insurance company, but I think that would be a waste of time. I don't make underwriting decisions, so I'm not going to tell you definitively that it's not going to happen, but I just, I've done it enough and seen enough and understand enough about it that it's just, they're never going to underwrite that in a memory care facility.
Then I want to ask you about exceptions. I'm very familiar with Vantage plans, and I have some background. I had worked with insurance. I've been a benefits specialist. But what I can't get my head around are things like exceptions. Medicare, as well as even regular insurance, has many things. Like we know dental's not covered, and although Advantage plans can. For someone, for example, if you've got TMJ, it's not covered, even though it's part of your jaw. Is that just something, is that part of the Medicare in general, or is that by the plan? Because I know someone in that situation, meaning that is it covered at all under Medicare, under any plan?
So all right, so if you're on original Medicare and Medicare covers the treatment, then it's covered and the supplement company you're with is going to cover it. When you get into Medicare Advantage, now you're dealing with the individual insurance companies. So if it's a service that Medicare covers, they have to cover it. But just because they're required to meet that Medicare standard, it doesn't mean that insurance company is not going to require prior authorization and could deny that. It's a big controversy, right? If you read the news about Medicare Advantage and the prior authorizations and everything. And so, they have to cover it, but if it doesn't meet their prior authorization requirements, they can delay care, deny it, right?
I guess I'm confused because I was told that Medicare didn't cover that, period, but
Well, if you're asking specifically about TMJ, I mean, there's
that's,
it's hard to get into every
dental doesn't cover it either. I mean, no one covers it, right?
pardon.
Dental plans do not cover TMJ. And it seems like from what I've read, that even Medicare doesn't cover it. I could be wrong, but that's what I've been told. So I just thought, maybe you don't have experience or know that, but I just thought I'd ask because keep being told that it's not covered.
What is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not well versed in TMJ, but at the end of the day, like there are certain things covered and certain things are not. Medicare would say if it's medically necessary, they may cover a TMJ surgery, right? But Medicare makes that determination at the end of the day. Is it, do they agree it's medically necessary? Most of the time, if the doctor says so, it is. But, is it an outpatient surgery? Is that what it's considered? And it's medically necessary? Then it may be covered under Part B. So there are certain things with TMJ that are not covered and certain things that may be. But that's the key language, is that every time you read something about Medicare, it's like, it may be covered. And I can't give any further,
Okay, my last question.
say, because I don't, again, that's their decision.
My last question, you can tell me because these other people would be interested in this, the SHIP program, the state health insurance, which I forgot what I'm talking about? I forgot the exact thing. Would they be able to answer those kind of questions?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it's a decent resource, depending on who you talk to.
Okay, for those people who don't know what that is, every state has a state insurance program. They also give advice as far as types and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as you see there in the screen, we always put in contact Medicare or your local state health insurance program for information. That could be on plan information. That could be on Medicare coverage. Again, they don't make Medicare determinations. So I'm always very cautious, just, myself, I'm not going to tell you unless it's very definitive that Medicare covers it. They may cover certain things, right, related to TMJ or other treatments, but, unless they definitively say like, hey, a pneumonia vaccine is covered 100%, it's not always that definitive, right? But typically on original Medicare, if it is medically necessary, it's inpatient or outpatient, it's pretty simple for a lot of things that medically necessary is approved. So.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I really appreciate it. I've seen this presentation before recently from Insight Memory Care. So let you know that I've seen.
Very good. Thank you for attending.
John, we'll have our last question of the night and then we're at time for the
Your
evening.
advertisement at the bottom of your screen, if I counted correctly, you're licensed in 35 states and DC. You are declining 14 other states. There's one state missing. Who is it?
A good point.
35 plus 14 is 49.
Yeah, we'll have to edit that. So I'm not sure. I'd have to sit here and do the.
It's a good program.
We'll sing a song together. Alabama, Alaska. I can go through it that way and figure it out. But that we'll definitely make note of that. Probably added a state at some point after we had this disclaimer printed.
Well, thank you, Kevin. We really
Thank you,
appreciate
Kevin,
it.
very much.
As
My
always.
pleasure. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your questions, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions for us.